Hi, hi.
Hi! Oh my gosh, and you're wearing your sweatshirt.
I am. I am. I believe in you. I'm wearing my sweatshirt. I have my book. If I'm honest now, I haven't taken the sweatshirt off. It is one of the coziest live-in items that I own, and the weather is, I would dare say not becoming chilly because let's be realistic, I'm in Arizona, but it's sweatshirt weather. So I've been living in it. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm absolutely thrilled that you love it. And I'm glad that it feels cozy because let me say, self-acceptance and belief in self is the coziest thing that you could feel in your whole life. So that's
You got
awesome.
You got that right. And I have to say, I'm pretty selfishly jazzed that we get to spend some time together here chatting because I was just going into just my personal feelings about you at this point. We connected so early on. There's so much of our past journeys and our current that just resonates with me on a personal level so much. So I've been honored to not only cross your path now in virtual life, but to be so connected on our own healing journey. So you've been such a pivotal person in my life. And now with this tool, I am so excited. Like I said, I'm pretty sure most of the community knows you, knows your work. And if they don't, I definitely want them to because the way you deliver your tools is so impactful. And I'm super excited to have a chat about your new book.
Well, thank you. And, I got to tell you, I'm super emotional because I also have to tell you that you've been present in my life for a while. Your book was so deeply meaningful. And my husband has recently started talking openly about his struggle with depression and about childhood trauma. And you are literally in bed. Your spiral bound book. We have your hardcover, but when you sent me your spiral bound manuscript, and how many of you literally, Dr. Nicole's work, her book, it has been so transformational for you. You are helping my husband heal at a very profound level. And so thank you so much. It's a real honor to be able to see you and to get to talk to you about kind of the intersection of what we're doing. And I was just literally, when you wrote last night that you found the book to be relevant and valuable and impactful, I don't know if I'll ever be able to wear the pair of pants I was wearing because I think I had an accident. I like could not. I was so what? Oh my God! So I'm
Well, I
super
mean that
excited.
from the bottomest of my heart and hearing the impact that my work continues to have in your life. That means the world to me. And like I said, I'm super excited to now introduce my community to your work. So talk to me. Tell me, I mean, I know you came a long way from the first book, The 5 Second Rule. So what what kind of got you thinking in this direction? What inspired this new piece of work you've now put out?
Well, I feel like, and your book opens with a face plant into the oatmeal, right? Like that, both of us, the dark night of the soul, I think, is sort of what brought me to this work. I have, for better or for worse, always either fallen into a hole or I've dug one for myself. And the result of a lot of the work that I've shared that has really resonated is the result of needing to figure out how to build a ladder to climb out of a hole that I have found myself in or dug for myself. And the 5 second rule, which I put out 5 years ago after, of course, a profound breakdown in my life, and has gone on to impact millions of people's lives. And I'm super proud of the fact that it's had a huge impact in people's mental health, and clinicians around the world use it. We had a whole group of inpatient nurses show up at the talk show I was hosting to tell me that of all the tools that they have inpatient when they discharge somebody, the 5 second rule is the most powerful one they've got because it's simple and it's easy to remember. And when you're somebody that has cascading thoughts that put you in a very dark place, counting backwards, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 is an incredibly powerful tool. And even knowing, Dr. Nicole, that more than 111 people have stopped themselves from attempting suicide by using the 5 second rule. I'm going to stand here right now and tell you that I personally feel that the high five habit and the tools that I share in this book that have such a profound overlap with the same tools that you're sharing with your community and with the world at large, this is going to be 100 times more profound. because the 5-second rule will help you interrupt patterns. The 5-second rule will certainly help you push through emotions, feelings, triggers, trauma that can hold you back or make you feel paralyzed. But it doesn't actually heal the deeper stuff that is causing you so much pain. And so back to your original question about how I came upon the high five habit is, I didn't sit down and say, okay, it's been 5 years, I better write a book with a 5 in it. Like, that would have been wonderful. I literally just woke up with a really familiar feeling in April of 2020. And the feeling is one that, we all have experienced in our lives, and we're all going to experience again. It's that feeling of being completely disconnected from yourself. It's feeling completely overwhelmed by your life. It's feeling emotionally depleted, and just absolutely exhausted by the demands coming at you and the just overwhelming amount of stuff to do. And so on one particular morning, and I'll tell you kind of the 2 days in this story that I think will really resonate with you, and I would love at any moment for you to stop and help me unpack this. But what happened is I woke up, and the worst place in the world for me is to lie in bed. Being a victim, of sexual trauma, having been molested at the age of, 8 in 4th grade,
Yes.
waking up from a sound sleep to having a kid on top of me, that moment of trauma, even though on the scale of what could happen to you, it was a one-off incident. It wasn't really scary. It was confusing. I immediately disassociated. I think that one experience locked into my nervous system 2 things: anxiety and disassociation as a response to any kind of unnerving moment. And the second thing it locked into place is that for the next, oh boy, I don't know, 42 years, the first thing I felt when I woke up every morning was something's wrong. And I realize now that was probably a trauma response to the things I experienced in childhood.
Yeah.
And right?
Yeah,
And
the first reaction I was having and hearing in bed in particular, right? The intimacy of being in bed. In bed for many of us is where our thoughts, kind of get the best of us and our minds run, whether it's right before we go to sleep or when we arise in the morning. And I had anticipated you were going to talk about that aspect of it. So when you compound the intimacy of bed and sleep and the safety, if we don't feel safe, we can't even drift off to sleep. And again, oftentimes our mind runs. So if you compound that with a trauma, with a violation then in that intimate space of your bedroom where one is needs to be safe, then of course, I can't imagine the impact that you carried even outside of your awareness. When you say dissociation, a lot of us disconnect when things like that happen, when we're too young, it's too overwhelming, it's too confusing. We don't have the support around us to make sense of it. We leave. However, it doesn't mean it leaves us. And for many of us, even waking in the morning, it's when our cortisol is the highest. Again, we have those racing thoughts. We have the whole day ahead of us, whatever that might bring. And then again, if for you were awoken in the middle of the night with something so violating, I can't even imagine what bed was for you. Even if you weren't fully aware of it, it was still living in your body, in your emotion, and in your spirit.
Yeah, totally. And the next morning when I went downstairs, because we were at this kind of like a big family trip, lots of families there, all the kids in a bunk room. When I got downstairs, my mom was cooking with all the moms, and she turned around and she goes, "How'd you sleep?" And I immediately wanted to tell her. And here's the interesting thing. I wasn't nervous about my mom's reaction because she's a farm gal. I knew she would take that spatula and probably, clock the kid into next week. Like there would be stuff would go down. I was all of a sudden froze because the kid, I could see him out of the corner of my eye. And I didn't know what he would do. And that was the moment that I locked a coping mechanism triggered by trauma into my being. And that is, the second you're worried about a reaction, lie. Just say what you think is going to make the situation okay. And so I did. I said, fine. And it wasn't until probably 20 years later that I actually consciously remembered this, or that I literally started talking about it. And then I spent another couple decades trying to unwind the trauma and link it all together. And I can really take it back probably even further, but that was really a defining moment for me.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you first and foremost. I should have thanked you before I kind of entered in there,
No.
but for sharing something so vulnerable. I know how difficult for even for some of us coming to that truth ourselves, right? Having that, I'm even watching some comments, a couple people on this live right now are having light bulb moments. It's really hard to look at our past experiences with such raw honesty, because then along with it comes all of the feelings we have about everything that happened and everything that didn't happen to us. So I really want to honor that. And I have a question for you, because you said something earlier and I'm interested on how these two connect, and then of course how they connect to the high five habit and the new tool. When you talked about I fall into holes, right, or I create them, you said something along that
Yeah.
language. So how, in your opinion, does that pivotal moment, this tendency to lie, to continue, I'm sure, to remain disconnected from your authentic truth? Because I know a lot of us, and I say this on the heels actually of recording a podcast myself on self-sabotage,
Oh,
right? So talk to me about falling into those holes and how you believe these two, obviously that pivotal moment and all of the coping that had happened, the onion, if you will,
yeah.
led you to creating those holes. And of course, now finding your way out of it through this amazing new tool.
Well, it's so interesting that we're starting here, and it's actually perfect because I can say now, being on the side of it, and particularly now that I've done EMDR, psychedelic guided modalities, I've gone headfirst into healing trauma. It's part of my day-to-day life to understand my trauma, to be compassionate with it, to heal it, to take care of myself. The high five habit has been extraordinary in that regard. We're going to get to it in a minute, but I want to try to be as careful as possible, because I really get like viscerally like angry when I hear people talk about how, you're responsible for everything. Because I don't fundamentally believe that. I feel I can see that because of things that happened to me, especially things that weren't my fault, whether that's the womb that you were, in, or your mother's dysregulation because she was a teen, a young teen mom like mine, away from her family and on edge, whether you were in a household with addiction or mental illness or abandonment or whatever, like none of that stuff's your fault. But I can now see how my own coping mechanisms, just because I didn't know any better, were the things that kept digging holes in my life. The constant insecurity and trauma response that led me to always be worried about what other people thought, always felt that it was my job to keep the peace, always one step ahead of everybody to make sure I didn't get hurt. And I think a lot of even me and the pace that I've lived at comes from sleeping and waking up to something like that. And so there's been this experience for me that I'm now realizing that it was deeply internalized. If I'm moving, you can't catch me.
Right.
And if I'm one step ahead of you, I can think about how to be manipulative. Well, not even be, I am being manipulative because I'm trying to manage your reaction to things. But it was all coming from a deep place of pain and coping mechanisms that my little fourth grade brain grabbed in the moment. And so, yeah, I take full responsibility for the shit that I did. And whether it was cheating on boyfriends, or it was the amount of alcohol and addiction that I struggled with at times in my life, whether it was just awful, gross, jealous, catty, comparison kind of behavior, whether it was squandering I mean, where do you want to go? I mean, if I started to like tell you what I used to be like, you'd feel like, well, Robbins, woo, girl, holy cow. I guess. And it's a lot of it's in the book. I mean, I, like you, the anxiety was so profound. I have very, very few memories from basically 35 years until about 8 years. And that was even while I was medicated on Zoloft. And I've only come to start to understand how one coping mechanism when you're in the fourth grade can spin out of control and become an entire pattern that controls your life. And you're so unaware that lying is a way of life and people pleasing is a way of life, and looking outside yourself for validation and for love and for support is a way of life. And your work and this new high five habit and the process of writing it and the process of studying it and the process of uncovering all this research has truly been a pathway back home. Like I literally feel like that's what this is about. And I know you've experienced this. I know people in this community have experienced this. You know, there's tremendous contentment and joy when you finally come back home to yourself and you reconnect with yourself. There's also a lot of sadness because you realize for just how long you have been disconnected from attacking, loathing, criticizing. And I think one of the reasons why this book is exploding so quickly, just like your work has, is because it's hitting something that's foundational for every human being.
I think you're really beautifully illustrating it when you say those words, come back home, right? We all, and I think a lot of listeners have heard this idea of, where's my authentic self, this intuition? How do I know my guidance? I think a lot of us do have this belief that it's for somewhere outside, or we can acquire it, and ultimately, I always use that onion analogy because that's how I feel it is. You peel back those layers and that home is within you. One of two things happen. We either become so disconnected that we can't even hear ourselves, or the little we hear ourselves, we've learned not to trust ourselves. And it's through those adaptations that you're very beautifully illustrating, whether it's the people pleasing. I'm seeing a ton of listeners resonating with people pleasing, that hypervigilance, that always trying to keep the peace. And then let's extend it further, because I would go as far to say, especially here in Western culture, some of that, when it turns into personality, gets rewarded when we become the overachiever, the busy person, the person who actually can't stop, won't stop, right? And there's a lot of external validation that we can then acquire by moving, by plowing through our goals, and by keeping ourselves busy and disconnected. And I think what's important, and I think I'm watching a lot of listeners here unpacking their own trauma, really realizing that that is coming from a place.
Yeah.
That it's coming usually from a wounded place. And it was our best attempt. Like you said, back my fourth grade self, that was the best I could do. And I say that speaking to all the shame that I know so many of us carry, whether or not we're aware of it or not. Every time we don't trust ourselves, every time we negate our own reality, every time we do look outside for someone else's truth that's more valuable than our own, we're continuing to erode that feeling of self, that self-trust. And it does then look like a really critical pit that so many of us are living around. And then we become, and I love how you weave in the science throughout the book, we become a self-validating machine.
Totally.
So talk to me a little bit about, kind of what you've learned in terms of how we keep ourselves locked in these
this
cycles.
Is incredible. It's incredible. So the morning that I discovered this thing, I'll kind of unpack this, because the first morning and the second morning, I know that you're going to take this like boom, even deeper. So here we go, everybody, buckle up. So it's April 2020, and I can't use my normal coping mechanisms. We're all in quarantine. So as I lose my dream job and my kids' college experience implode, and they're grieving and upset and sad, and I'm terrified for I'm scared for everybody and the frontline workers, and life is upside down, and the anxiety starts to kind of roll back in. I can't run to Target. I can't go to the coffee shop. I can't distract myself by running to do a speech. I can't go see my friends. All of the busyness, by the way, which I now can see was a form of self-regulating stress and trauma. That if I'm on the run, I don't have to deal with the woman in the mirror. If I'm moving and the adrenaline is pumping, I don't actually have to sit and be with myself. Maybe I can just outrun this stuff. And so and even the genesis of the 5-second rule, the genesis was, if I move fast enough, if I launch myself out of that bed, maybe I won't be there when the anxiety hits. So even that was like a perfect illustration of just push through it, don't deal with it. It's a fast thing that has profound effect, but it doesn't hit the source of what's causing all of the hatred and the tension and the pain in the first place. So I get out of bed, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I make my bed that morning so I don't crawl back into it. I feel exhausted, overwhelmed. We've all felt this before, whether you felt it during the pandemic or you felt it because you lost a job or somebody just says, I don't love you anymore, or you hate how you look. We've all felt this. I'm overwhelmed by my life. I'm exhausted. I can't face this. I get into the bathroom. I start brushing my teeth, and I immediately catch a glimpse of myself, and I think, oh my God, you look like hell. And then the habit starts that I really want us to unpack, because every single human being I'm discovering has a habit that is so destructive and none of us are talking about because it's so subtle and it is so hard baked into your mind. And it's this: every morning in the bathroom mirror, you either ignore yourself, which is a form of rejection, or you pick yourself apart and see all the things you need to fix or what you don't like. And this isn't, this is everybody. 50% of people are uncomfortable or will not look at themselves in the mirror.
I'll admit, I raised my hand. Took me a very long time to really, truly, and there's still discomfort there of looking at myself. And I used to tell myself, well, it's okay. I know how I feel in my body, and that's my marker. I feel good today, and that's all I need. I don't need to look at that mirror. Not really understanding that I was in that active avoidance. Something felt very intimate, very vulnerable. Before I even got to then the criticism of myself, it just was for me pure avoidance. I didn't really care. I mean, I would need mirrors if I maybe put some makeup on. And outside of that, me and mirrors, I didn't have a relationship with them at all. Not knowing, again, I told myself the story of why I believed I wasn't looking at them until I dove down and unpacked it and understood that there was a discomfort there and still, like I said, remains for me.
Well, same for me. So I start picking myself apart. I feel my energy going down. And, the interesting thing, as I felt myself just getting so defeated, why'd you get up late? You haven't texted Nicole back. The dog's not walked. Like, I'm just like dragging. And all the research around emotional contagion. So do I. That this emotion and negative space is going to impact your productivity. Like, we know all this, but it's a habit. I've been doing this for 4 decades is how long I've been doing this as part of my morning routine. And so if you had walked in the bathroom that morning, I would have spun on a dime. I'd have been like, Nicole, I know this is terrible. I'm so sorry you're going through this. You don't deserve this. But if anybody can face this, you can. What do you need? I would have lifted you up. I could not think of a thing to say. And here's the thing, I wouldn't have even believed it because it didn't match how I was feeling. And I don't know what came over. I honestly believe it was the universe, the divine source saying, all right, we're ready for this. Because it is so cheesy on its face. I'm literally in my underwear, alone with the dog at my feet, literally having the dark night of the soul. And I lift my hand to my tired reflection because the woman in the mirror needed a high five. And in that moment, lightning didn't strike. It wasn't like the heavens opened and, purple light came in and, whoa, that's not what happened. As you know, too, like you kind of have this awakening and then it's like, now what? No, but I felt this like shift, and I can explain the science. It's crazy. I felt this shift, and the energy wasn't lovely. The energy was more like, oh, come on. I laugh. Oh, Mel, come on. It's not, get out there. You're safe, you're fine. Like I kind of shoved myself. I didn't even think, I didn't say it. It was a shift. But Nicole, holy cow, the second morning, this is when my healing took a quantum leap. Like, I can't even wait till you guys hear this. Like, I cannot wait for everybody to experience this. I wake up, same overwhelm, same just defeated, down, tired, anxious, stressed, alone. And I, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, get out of bed. I make the bed. I start walking to the bathroom. And I realize I am feeling something I don't think I'd ever felt in my entire adult life. And it was this. You know how when you're about to walk into a cafe and you're going to see somebody you just love, you like them so much, you're about to walk in. What do you feel?
I mean, anything from, excitement to even that warm love, I think that you are expecting to go and receive in that moment.
Yeah. I actually felt that about seeing myself.
How powerful.
I had never felt that as an adult. I'd been excited to see an outfit or what my hair looked like, but I had never felt that sense of joy or excitement about seeing the human being, Mel
Being,
Robbins.
the being, right? Because I'm thinking too, I'm like, what? Like, I just went down a trip of what have I felt excited about? And if I were to categorize, it was the stuff I was doing, I would say, or or even an event. It didn't have to even be an accomplishment. As I began to heal, as I began to shift a little less into I have to achieve things, it would just still be an exciting experience I had planned coming up. And I'm having a really hard time having consistent or frequent memories of just me being enough. And for me, if I map it on back into childhood, one of my major copings too was that doing, was shifting from, right, a little girl self-expressing in whatever way to there were things that it was very clear I was good at very early on. And so for me, that shift into doing, and then the excitement, the warm feelings, even the loving connection. I could even go as far to say that my doingness, my achievements, my like how I was in the world actually for me for a long time was point of connections for me in my family
Mm-hmm.
relationships, in my friendships. How can I serve you? How can I show up for you? Friend, partner, whomever. And so for me, it's hard to think of moments where I felt enough, excited, warm about me without action, uncloaked, just raw in a mirror.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. And it goes back to something you said earlier. You also tend to get a lot of positive, uh, emotion and praise when you're achieving those things. At least I did too. And I think that's why I
Yeah.
chased it so much. I had fused the
Mm-hmm.
doing with being lovable, the
Mm-hmm.
achieving with being worthy. And so as I walk into the bathroom that second morning and the sort of profound nature of what was unfolding started to hit me, I have this second epiphany as I'm brushing my teeth. And that is this: every morning, there are two people in the bathroom. There's you, and there's a human being in the mirror who needs you. They are trying so hard. They are waiting for you to wake up and to realize that they're there. They need your encouragement. They need your support. They need your love. They are so tired of you picking them apart and thinking about all the things that are going wrong. And as I put my toothbrush down, I remembered the fact that yesterday, the day before, I had been researching how do I need to change right now because I have all these people on my team. How am I going to show up for my family? And I found this piece of research from Harvard that says that if you take just less than a minute of intentional reflection about how you're going to show up for the people that you're leading, and this could apply to your family, anybody, it changes your focus, your productivity, it changes your mood, it changes how you show up, your ability to impact. And for whatever reason in that moment, it all fused together. And I thought, well, what if I do that for me? And I asked myself a question I had never asked myself before. And it was this: who do you need me to be today? Like, I asked the woman in the mirror, who do you need me to be today? How can I show up for you? And, what kind of popped in my mind that morning was like, well, it'd be nice if you were kinder to me because I'm trying really hard. And then the next one was, it'd be great if you could muster up some optimism here. Have a little fun today. Like, you know, it's like, hell, throw me a lifeline, Mel. And as I thought about it, I then went and I raised my hand and I sealed it with this high five. And something like, it just felt like this fusion with the person in the mirror. And that's when I really got it. I got that this is so much deeper and more profound, because what I'm actually doing is I'm fulfilling my fundamental emotional needs. I am seeing myself. I am meeting myself where I am. I am affirming my unique need, and I am celebrating myself exactly where I am right now, whether it's challenging, whether it's exhilarating. I am with myself right in that moment in a way that I don't know if I had ever been.
I think it's really, pivotal. And I want to reiterate this because I think it's such a great point of understanding. Back to that onion analogy again, when you said there's two people, right? And I could go as far to say that so many of us have different masks, different selves, right? The core, like we were just talking about, is who we really are. Though
Mm-hmm.
so many times in our day to day, we are showing up in all of these different ways, playing all of these different roles. And there is an us that we need to, and the journey becomes about connecting back to. Though a lot of us are kind of at odds with even ourselves in so many moments because we're so practiced at showing up in all of these other ways that we've lost so much sight of the authentic core within each of us. And what you're also illustrating, I think that's so important, is the practice of that reconnection, right? And many of us start by not knowing, not seeing ourselves, not knowing what there is even to see or to self-express. For me, I share this story often. When I came to the awareness that I, like you and like many of us, filter the whole world through everyone else and what their needs may be, I had a big gaping hole of knowledge. I didn't know myself. I didn't really know that person in the mirror. I did know that we do, I believe, as humans universally, I don't care where you're signing onto this live right now around the globe, we have at our core the desire to be seen, to be heard, to be just in full self-expression, and for that to be enough. Yet I didn't know who that person was. So I share this because I do want to speak to the people who, as we begin to look in the mirror, and for a lot of us, it might just be a concept. Okay, there's an authentic self in there where I don't know where that person is. I don't know what that person needs yet. And that's when we begin the journey to explore. Because I, like many of us, didn't know at first, was profoundly uncomfortable with even beginning to ask those questions. What do I need right now? Can I just be enough in this moment? And it is the question that sets us off into the journey. And I share that because I know a lot of us, we want to know the answers, or we think we should, and then we shame ourselves out of even taking the journey into exploring those. But for me, I'll share, that's how my journey began, not knowing at all, with incredible discomfort, even around stopping to even ask myself those questions. And of course, like you said, it does not happen overnight. I say there's no light switch here. Oh, I heal now. And again, I want to highlight the practice of it, right? Because there's concepts, there's books, there's, people and teachers and tools and techniques, and they're all in theory until, like I say, we bridge the gap from theory into action. And that's what I've always resonated so much with your work, from the 5 second, this idea of the tool. How do I
Right.
practically apply
Right.
this? And now, of course, the high five habit. How do I turn this idea into a daily action that can actually help me create the change that I'm looking for, to
Well,
A, reconnect
yes.
with that person beneath, and B, to over time grow to love them. Over time, grow to love them.
I love the overtime. Now, here's how I'll unpack the experience of doing this, because we've now studied it for a year. The science is so incredible about what we're going to teach you to do, because we're going to teach you to take programming that is already in your subconscious brain and already stored in your nervous system, and you've been giving it to other people. I'm going to teach you for free how to aim it back at yourself and benefit from it. This is bananas. And in fact, Dr. Nicole, some of this stuff I only learned 2 weeks ago, and it's not even in the book because I spent a couple hours with Dr. Daniel Amen. He went crazy over this and explained a bunch of things that I didn't even understand using science. So wait till you all hear this. So when you do this, I want you to start this practice right after you brush your teeth, because as you talk about a lot, as the research shows, if you stack something new, something very, very small, you're more likely to be successful in remembering to do it. And if it's tiny and small, it's in your work, it's a simple promise that you can keep. And when you keep your word to yourself, it's how you mend the years of betraying yourself. And so this stacks really beautifully in with all the stuff that Dr. Nicole has suggested that you think about when you start making and keeping simple promises. So we're going to brush our teeth, right? Because we got to get the gunk out of our mouth. We don't want to spread dragon breath all over everybody. Let's also then use the high five habit, and let's get the gunk out of our mind, body, and spirit so that we're not spreading all of that into the world. Now, there's a couple things that you're going to experience when you first try this. I would expect that, a lot of you listening may not feel weird doing it, but everybody feels like, okay, really? Like, this is kind of weird. I mean, I know I'm watching you too, but even for you too, this is a little strange. So, I get it. It's okay. I'm going to explain neurologically why you're going to think it's weird. The reason why you think it's weird immediately is because you have the opposite habit of rejecting or criticizing yourself as part of your morning routine right now. So if I were to lose this arm, my right hand, and I have to suddenly write with my left hand, my opposite hand, it's going to feel weird because it's new. That's great news. That just means your brain is learning something new, okay? So expect it to feel a little funky. Second thing is, you're only going to have one of two reactions to this. It's either really positive. So you go to raise your hand and you'll start laughing. A lot of people do that because it is kind of funny the first time you do it. But that's also because every time you have ever received or given a high five to somebody else, your brain drips dopamine. So Dr. Amen was also telling me the reason why you feel a boost in your mood after you do it is because your brain releases dopamine. Your brain doesn't know the difference between high-fiving somebody else and you high-fiving yourself. It gives you the exact same response in your own body that's already programmed in there whenever you high-five somebody else. The other reaction that's positive, and maybe you can help me unpack this, is we get a tremendous number of people, Dr. Nicole, who write to us and say, is it normal to burst into tears? And I think it's not only normal, I think it's beautiful, because I think it's an emotional, cathartic, spiritual release of you finally coming back home.
Yes. Interestingly enough, I was posting a couple weeks ago, I think, about tears, crying, right? And all of the different emotions that are released in, the tear, the crying process. It's not just, I think traditionally we think of sadness and sad. The nervous system reaction behind the release, it can engulf and embody a ton of different feelings. And I think it highlights too, I talk a lot about our energetic being, describing emotions as physiological events and as energies in our body. So especially if you've resonated at the start of our talk with me and you sharing, I'm disconnected, I'm dissociated, I don't know how I feel, chances are, doesn't mean that you're not having those feelings. Chances are they're stuck, they're stagnant, and they're pent up inside of you. I will be the first to admit, when I began my healing journey, shortly after the bowl of oatmeal was just the beginning. I probably spent a good 3 to 6 months crying. And I'm not, I mean, historically, yes, I cry at moments. I'm not a hugely tearful person. I go as far as when I was dissociated, was not a hugely emotional person. Stress I had down. I knew how to be stressed, and I knew how to stress the world around me out. Any other feeling though, right? If I were to drop in and be vulnerable, be sad, be angry, I would tell you I wasn't either of those things because all I really registered was stress. So that level of disconnection, right? There was so much feeling. And when I began my healing journey, I didn't even know why I was crying half the time. So the bowl of oatmeal story, for those of you who read my book, was one of many. in moments of days even where tears were such a part, and I couldn't explain them. I didn't have words. If my partner Lolly at the time would have asked me, like, as she often did, like, what's wrong? I mean, through tears, I would just, I don't know. I didn't really even have words, yet the release of crying for me was quite a consistent on the beginning of my journey. And that's how I understand it. All of
Mm.
those years of deep sadness, deep anger, deep wounding that I ran from, just like you, kept myself distracted from, as I began to be, just a little more dropped in, a little more consciously aware of myself, and a little more safe because of the relationship that I was in and was creating for myself at the time. I was able to then blow the cap off, and out it came. So for me, I would say tears was such an important release for me to heal, that wasn't just tears of sadness all the time. A lot of times tears, like I said, have all different feelings pent up in them.
Yeah. Well, it's very common, and I think it's a really beautiful thing. And I loved, when you talked about the energetic thing, I immediately had this like feeling of almost like plugging a cord into a wall, and that there's this sort of energetic exchange when you come back home to yourself. And, people are writing to us about the delight that they're feeling. And so that's incredible. But the more likely experience is probably resistance. And I want to tell you the three sources of the resistance that we've identified. And there's probably even more, but I want you to know this is very, very common. First of all, for those of us that have experienced trauma or abuse or neglect or discrimination or poverty or all kinds, heartbreak, abandonment, anything that you have survived, a lot of us drag that into the bathroom every morning, and it stands between you and the person in the mirror. And you see it as evidence that the person you're staring at, if you'll even look at them, is damaged or unworthy or whatever you say, unlovable. And so the resistance is this deep-seated belief that because of those things that you've survived, you do not deserve the high five, which is where the resistance comes from. So I'm here to tell you, if that resonates for you, the high five is a beautiful thing because you don't need to say a word. You can feel all that resistance. That's okay. Because the physical gesture and the programming in your mind do all the work for you. And, if you have survived all those things in your life, you not only deserve a high five, you need one. And you need one to heal. Because, if you can think about the times where you have given or received a high five, Dr. Nicole, what does the gesture communicate whenever you give it to somebody?
I think high fives communicate acknowledgement, right? You see that person and you feel, I'm going to use some version of favorable. You're celebrating some
Mm-hmm.
aspect of what they're doing.
Yeah, it's like, I love you, I see you, I believe in you, keep going. If somebody's having a bad day, shake it off, you got this. And you've never in your entire life high-fived somebody and thought, I hate you, I hope you lose, you're the worst. You can't do it. Like, so if you can
Yeah.
stand there and say that person in the mirror is unlovable, but the second that you raise your hand to high five yourself, your brain takes over, and so does your nervous system, because they know what a high five means. So it is impossible. Try it. Try it. You cannot high five yourself and actually think something terrible about yourself, because your brain neurologically won't allow you because of the programming in there. It's like trying to sing the lyrics to a different song while Let It Be is playing. You can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's in your mind. And so the more that you make this a daily practice, what ends up happening is you silence the critic, and the programming associated with the high five starts to marry with your own reflection. Now, another thing that happens is, like, form of resistance is all the regrets that you have and the shame that you carry. So if you're human, you have done things that you deeply regret, whether it's cheating or lying or addiction or hurting others or hurting yourself, all stuff that you did, by the way, while you're trying to survive. Things that you would gladly forgive Dr. Nicole or Mel Robbins for, but you drag it into the bathroom every morning. And you use that as evidence again to see a person that is not worthy of celebration because of those things. This was actually a really big insight because of Chris, my husband. So when he got out of the restaurant business, the restaurants that he and his best friend opened ultimately shut down. And it was interesting to watch that happen, because when they shut down, his business partner looked at the 7-year experience and was like, it's restaurants, you know, I'm really proud of what we did. We worked hard. We did a good job. Like, we were great employers. Like, we had a great product. Okay. You know, whatever. Did we return the profit? Nope. Let's move on. My husband couldn't do it. He could not do it. He had the classic experience of shame. The restaurant failed. I'm a failure. I did not know, Dr. Nicole, how deep of a hole he had fallen into because of the masks that he was wearing, hiding his depression, probably not even present to the fact that he was experiencing depression. And then, of course, once he started to realize that's what it was, feeling like there was something broken, he has for 7 years stood next to me at the bathroom sink and looked in the mirror and seen a human being who's a failure. And when I first started doing this, and I said to him, you know, I think you should try this, Chris. Like, this has some crazy impact on me. I think this might help bring the light back in. And he said, the high-fiving yourself is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And as we unpacked what the stupid was, because I said, actually, Chris, I think the reason why you think it's stupid is because you don't think you deserve one. And that's the heart of the resistance, that you are standing in such profound judgment that you are refusing to give yourself the forgiveness and the acknowledgement and the support that you need to pivot and turn toward healing and moving your life in the direction you deserve to move it in. And what's great about the high five is you don't have to stand in front of the mirror and go, I'm great. You don't have to do that. And in fact, it wouldn't work, because for years you've told yourself you're not. But the second, again, this is called neurobics. It's a whole field of neurological research. The second you apply that physical motion, your brain's programming takes over. It silences the beatdown and you go, this. And it doesn't mean, yeah. It actually is compassion. It says, I see you. Yeah, the last 7 years sucked, but I'm still here and I still love you and I still believe in you. It sends you into your day feeling like you have your own back.
And I would go as far to say that for most of us, that compassionate acceptance is the first brick on that road too, right? The elusive self-love. Especially, I know a lot of people on this live right now are, you know, very aware of their narratives, as I say, around unworthiness or not being good enough. And some of us aren't as aware of it, though our actions, our life, the choices we're making, you know, are reflecting that deep rooted belief. And I often make the joke of, don't expect you to believe how awesome you are as you begin to step and walk through this resistance. I almost say it's our subconscious going to roll its eyes at you, right? When you try to, and for a lot of us, for a long time, when people hear this idea of you know, positive thinking and just write an affirmation and repeat it enough, and before long, you'll believe it. That's really hard, because at our core, we've been battling, and we've actually been filtering the world to confirm this really deep rooted negative belief for so long that we're not overnight going to believe how great I am. We're not going to believe this affirmation at all. And it's that compassionate acceptance, I believe, that is that first step into that journey. So don't expect anyone out there who's began the high five habit, or who will. I'm seeing a lot of people getting ready to gear up and sign on to your challenge. Don't expect to affirm yourself or to accept how great you are the first time you look in the mirror, especially if you've been validating how ungreat you are, how unworthy you are for so long. It's going to feel uncomfortable. And the first step in that direction is just looking maybe at yourself, showing up for yourself in that much more visceral, visual even way, before we can expect that deep rooted change, because it is a journey.
And you know what I would recommend, if you can't look at yourself, is look away, but still do the high five. Because I want you to leverage the programming in your brain. We had a woman write to us who had been struggling with dysmorphia for 20 years. had not looked at herself in a mirror in 20 years. And she started with a high five looking away. And it took less than 5 days for her to be able to turn toward herself, because the rejection programming was being silenced. And there was a door opening up that allowed for the high five. I believe in you. I accept you. I'm here with you. And she says, I can now see, I don't even see a face. I see myself. And it's through that kind of acceptance. And this is what you talk about all the time. Like, you are not going to heal or change your life by beating yourself up. It's only with that first brick of compassion. You know, this high five habit doesn't turn you into a narcissistic jerk. It actually brings more compassion and empathy to your own experience. And that's the door opening for you to learn how to truly love and accept yourself. I knew I needed to love myself. I didn't know how. And, you know, the third form of resistance is what you and I know so well, because we've talked about it a lot. And this is one that comes up for tons of people. And that is, unless you've done something that deserves the high five, like you've hit the weight, you are the size pants, your hair looks good, you have the money in the bank, you're driving the right car, you're dating the right person, you're doing the right thing, your mom's, like whatever it is, the thing outside of you, unless that's happening, you don't think you deserve something. And, you know, when you flip it and you realize, no, your life is a marathon, and we don't stand along the edge of a walkathon and a marathon with our arms crossed and go, mile 7. Do you see the pace you're running? I'm not cheering for you till you get to the finish line. And even then, I'll see what your time looks like. No, we cheer for people, clap for them, high five them every step of the way. And that's what you need to be doing to propel yourself forward. Your favorite sports teams, they don't start a game by standing there, Dr. Nicole, I saw your last book. It really blew. You know, I don't know how this one's going to go. That's not how you start a game. You literally ground down in optimism. You ground down in partnership, in trust, in faith. And then you seal it with this positive, energizing gesture that aligns you on that commitment. You send yourself into your day that way. And the final piece of research that's really exciting, and I bet you'll be able to even go deeper on this, is Dr. Amen asked me, he said, so when you leave the bathroom, do you notice that you feel a little more energized? And I said, yeah, I'm assuming it's just because, you know, it's like, hey, you know, it's kind of cheesy. Is that what it is? And he said, no. He's like, Mel, no. He said, just what you said about emotion and energy. Our nervous systems are wired for vitality. They have celebratory engine or energy encoded in them. And so there are all these gestures you've done forever, whether it's celebrating somebody scoring where you raise your hands, or crossing a finish line, or raise your hand to wave hello, or raise your arms to hug somebody, or raise your arms to high five. The reason why you feel your vitality come back is because your nervous system also recognizes the gesture. So you get dopamine, you get the positive programming, and you get this little boost of celebratory energy that comes through your system to lift you into the day.
So helpful, because when you listen to my work, I often drop things down into the nervous system. The reason why most of us are stuck living, again, going back full circle to this conversation, living the habits and patterns, the adaptations, the language you and I were using, right? Based around what? Trying to create safety in our nervous system. And then most of us become locked as that is a way of being. That becomes who we are, a constant attempt at reestablishing that safety that we never once had. Our nervous system, and that's why I think I find this book so profound. It's because you're integrating the body, right? You're not saying write an affirmation and practice it. You're saying, let's actually get our body involved. Let's get our nervous system. Let's actually create, and that is, I believe, why the high five habit produces, right, the depth of healing that we're all looking for. Because, I mean, of course, my handle here is the holistic psychologist, right? The need for holistic healing is, in my opinion, here. And given, you know, everyone on this live right here, I think we're all aware that we are in a body, and that for many of us, it's our body that's keeping us stuck, and it's our body that holds the key to create the healing, to allow us to heal. So what I find so profound is not only are you giving a practical tool, I can't tell you, Mel, I don't know if you've been reading the comments, there's so many people resonating, relating with different aspects of our journey into healing and healing. So the relatableness, the understandableness. Now here you've given us an action plan each morning, no matter how uncomfortable it is, no matter how deep rooted that unworthiness is, even if you don't even know yet where that came from, you don't have to. And that's what I find so impactful too. Healing can begin now. It can begin in this next moment, the next time you go see a mirror. And what we're doing in that moment is so profound, again, because we're entering our body into the equation. And you
Yes.
have now a way to shift our body's energy and to create actually change from the bottom up, which is, in my opinion, how healing actually occurs. So where can we find your book? Talk to me. I have a ton of people I'm actually seeing that have jumped on, that have ordered. If you don't yet
Oh, wow.
have Mel Robbins' High Five Habit, where can we grab a copy?
You can get it anywhere you want. And honestly, I'll also tell you, I am reading the book cover to cover every day for 15 minutes until we get through it on Instagram and Facebook, because I know there's so many people who can't afford a book right now.
Oh, how
And
incredible.
and
Okay. Mm-hmm.
for me, this is a vehicle for you to empower yourself. I may have created it, but it's powered by you to empower yourself, because like you so eloquently said, it is taking your body's wisdom and the programming that you've encoded over a lifetime of giving this to other people, and you're aiming it back at yourself. You're unlocking something that's already in there to help you heal, to help you flip between the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, to help you feel yourself going low when you get jealous or you start comparing or you feel insecure. And it's giving you a way to come back and locate all of that strength and power back within yourself. And I know you talk about this all the time too, because that relationship that you have with yourself, it's the foundation of every relationship that you have. And what's amazing is that when you feel secure with yourself, it doesn't matter what somebody else says, because they can't say anything that won't make you feel less secure. If you love yourself, if somebody stops loving you, yes, it hurts, but it won't impact whether or not you love yourself. If you like yourself for real and you support yourself, if somebody's a jerk to you, that's okay. It doesn't impact the fact that you still like yourself. And so knowing that you have a way to come back into your body, to come back and connect with yourself, to support yourself through the ups and downs that is everyday life, that's the most incredible thing in the world. And so you can get the book anywhere. I'll read it to you for free over the next month and a half online every day. And we're doing a free a 5-day challenge called the High Five Challenge that starts October 4th. It's with a bazillion awesome, inspiring folks. Dr. Nicole's amazing for letting me talk about this here. I really appreciate it. But it's literally just 5 days. We've already got, gosh, I don't know, we're getting close to 40,000 people signed up from around the world. Yes. And it is just 5 days of you getting coaching on breaking through some of the doubts and fears that hold you back. We go way deep into the science on this. You get journaling prompts, and more importantly, you get a community of people that are going to be cheering you forward. My commitment is to launch you so high, you need a parachute to get your feet back on the ground.
I love that. I love that. And speaking of community, I mean, your community is so amazing. That's, I believe, seeing on lives like this, right? Hearing you and I talk, share our story, just seeing the resonance. Those of us who do show up, and do share, I urge everyone to do that, because I believe it's when we share our stories, when we see the humanity, like I said, I've watched innumerable people say, wow, this is me, right? Yeah, you and I are on the screen right now, though we're human too. And a lot of the experiences can help inform others. So I love how vulnerably you've always shared your journey, how you share so much of your journey in the High Five Habit. It's just such an incredible aspect, I think, of healing for all of us, because like you said, we all want relationships. And until we really are truly in relationship with ourselves, until we can empower ourselves to navigate our day-to-day life in an empowered way, because like we said at the beginning, life happens. Things outside of our control happen on a day-to-day basis. So where we can gain control is, how do we show up? And can I stay connected to myself, secure in myself, and trusting in myself, even if the world around me isn't showing up in those ways. And I could not agree with you more that that happens when we reestablish the relationship with ourselves. When we begin to first shift into that, right, acceptant, compassionate mode, which then over time will allow us to become that cheerleader that so many of us so readily show up for everyone else.
Totally.
We can actually look at ourselves in that mirror and then shift into that acceptance, that love. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Like I said, I was so taken by your work. So I'm so
Oh,
happy that I have my hands now on a hard
thank you.
copy. I am
Thank you.
such an incredible fan of you and your journey and your work and how freely you share with the world. Hearing you're reading this, that just is so amazing. So thank you, Mel. Like I said at the beginning, you've inspired me on so many personal levels, and I feel very connected to you. So it's been such an honor to support you and your newest venture. So thank you for your time and your energy. And to clarify, I saw a million questions. This will be saved. This will be up on my IGTV. I know a lot of people tuned in halfway or maybe want to revisit your wisdom again. So an absolute yes, this is not going anywhere. I would never dare think of it. So this will live on my Instagram. And I'm sending you so much love, Mel, as you
Thank
continue
you.
to navigate the rest
Thank
of
you.
your book launch week, because
Thank
I
you.
know all of the craziness that goes along with that. And thank you for carving out the time for us today.
Thank you for carving out the time. I love you. I see you. I support you. High five, baby.
Right back at you. High five, Mel. Have
I'll
a
see
good
you in
rest
the
of your
challenge,
day.
everybody.